Here in Illinois, the weather can turn very hot and very humid and very dangerous very quickly. Now granted, we don't have anything on states like Arizona and Texas where 100 degrees and greater is a fact of life for pretty much the entire summertime, but it still gets hot enough in Illinois that conditions can turn dangerous and failures of any kind of cooling equipment can be disastrous and deadly. Now what we have here in my parents' kitchen is the world's cheapest ceiling fan. Now sometimes I call these paddle fans because let's face it, they have paddles, so expect to hear the two terms used interchangeably in this video. Despite this ceiling fan's cheapness, it has lasted quite well. They put this in when they bought the house in late 1989, early 1990. There was just originally, I think, a simple ceiling light here, and they decided it would be advantageous to have a ceiling fan. But despite this fan's cheapness, it has lasted very well over the years. In fact, it's only had 2 repairs ever done to it. It's had a new light kit installed. You'll notice that there is a certain mismatch between the style of metal on the ceiling fan itself and that which the light kit is made of. The other service it has required is in the forward and reverse operation switch. The contacts on that switch became so oxidized that the ceiling fan motor would no longer run in either direction. But I hit that thing with a shot of deoxit because it was just an open-bodied switch. Everything came back to working again. Well, the other day, we had another little failure. Now you can see the fan's running, but you can't change the speed on it, I'll promise you that, because look at what's missing from that switch. That's right, the chain pulled out. Isn't that just lovely? So now, tonight's handyman project, and I really mean early this morning's handyman project, is going to be the installation of a new speed control switch for the ceiling fan, which I have over here. Now it goes without saying that if you're going to do electrical work in your house, take the time to be safe and do it properly. That is to say, you need to turn the power off, and if you're unsure, by all means, do not. Everything else can be replaced, but you can't. Now since I'll have to cut power to this ceiling fan, and those kitchen lights over there won't be much help when I'm making a video, you can see I've lined up some task lighting here. Now you might ask why I'm not using something like a drop light or a trouble light. Well, a lot of the drop cords and trouble lights around here are in worse condition than the extension cords. They've done more rounds with being run over by cars and things like that than most of the extension cords have, being eaten by the electric hedge clippers or the electric weed eater. I can remember very often as a child, my mother would be outside using the electric weed eater, and for a moment the lights in the basement at our old house would dim perceptibly, and then they would come back again and I'd hear a loud click from the circuit breaker box, which is always a good time. So I figure these desk lamps are probably my best bet. Now this one's working pretty well. It started right up. That's working fine. This other one, I think, needs a little help. It's definitely having some problems. I think I'm going to need a new bulb for that one. Oh well. One light's better than nothing. Pointed at the ceiling, and with some help from those over there, it ought to be more than enough to get started. Now, in order to get started, it is vitally important that you shut the power off. There are many good reasons why you should do this. 2 that spring readily to mind are the possibility of a miswired switch. I haven't seen it often, but I have seen it done where an electrical switch is incorrectly wired such that it does something along the lines of switching the neutral side of the line instead of the hot, which can lead to you having a shocking experience even if you feel that you've shut the power off via the light switch. Second possibility that springs to mind is someone coming into a room and taking the electrical light's presence and functionality for granted, or not being able to see you when you're in a certain room, such as a long hallway. Either way, they turn the switch on and your world might as well go up to 1,000,000 candle power for a second or two, if it doesn't kill you outright, which is a very real possibility anytime you're doing something involving household electricity. Okay, as it turns out, I needed both table lamps after all, because this one's base is not heavy enough to keep it in place when the lamp head is rotated backwards like that. So the broken lamp definitely came in handy. Now one of the first things that's got to happen here These are kind of hot. I should probably let them cool rather than trying to drop them on the floor like a complete nincompoop. But the first thing to do is to get all these bulbs out of the fixture. Don't these just look wrong in a fixture like this? Shouldn't there be incandescent bulbs in here, or some of those pretty iridescent glass ones or something like that? Alright. Now if I was really feeling fancy, I would take the, well, I probably will take those off anyway because I don't want to drop the whole light kit if I can avoid doing it, but I may have to do that just so it doesn't come down and brain me on the head later. There's another problem I need to fix. This whole assembly has become quite wobbly, and I would assume that there's probably some kind of a threaded stud up in that electrical assembly that has a nut on it to keep this in place. I'm going to take a look at tightening that up as well, because that could probably fall off in time and cause somebody to get brained by ceiling fan wiring. Alright, now I've got the light kit taken down, and you can see there's a few interesting things in here. There's the run capacitor for the little fan motor, and here's a wiring harness connection that actually goes to the old switch, the orange thing over here. In theory, at least, if the company that made this fan was still in business, you could probably buy from them at a greatly inflated price, no doubt. A replacement switch that would simply plug into that connector and all would be well once again. In order to remove the old switch, that's pretty easy. All we have to do is grab a hold of this knurled nut on the outside and twist that off. It just unscrews. There you can see it. And then the old switch comes out, and you can clearly see what went wrong here. One of those beads, the little link that holds those little beads in place, simply just pulled in two. Now, to remove this switch, you're supposed to take the wires out one at a time according to the directions that came with the new switch, which is a good idea, so that in theory you know what they do, and then reinstall them on the new switch. Push the new switch into the hole, attach the knurled nut to it, and then put everything back together like the light kit once again. You can see I actually capped off the light kit wires here just so I'd remember where they were and to provide an additional but very, very slight margin of safety. Again, it is vitally important that you disconnect the power before doing anything like this on your own. I take no responsibility for people who watch these videos and decide to do these things yourself. Use common sense, be safe, and know when you're in over your head. Now, one thing I haven't been able to figure out is just exactly how this thing is held to the ceiling fan. It's certainly not like I would have expected it to be. There does appear to be something with threads up there, but I can't turn it without twisting those wires around and around, which is inevitably not good for them. Okay, now, continuing on, you can see I've liberated wire number 2, which is yellow in color from the switch, and I'll proceed to connect that to connection number 2 on the new switch. Now, a paper clip is what's used to release these, but if you don't have, or you don't feel like going to get a paper clip, an extremely thin screwdriver or a meter lead like I've used here can definitely be used to liberate those wires. Now, this is important. When you go to install the new switch, you need to make sure that your wires have been sufficiently stripped. You can see there's a strip gauge there, and when I put the wire up to that, it should be at least as long as that strip gauge is, and I may have to trim a little excess off if there is any stray wire, uninsulated wire, poking out of the side of the switch when I'm done, because that presents a shock hazard if a live wire should ever touch this. This should in theory be grounded, but especially in an older house like this, who knows? So why take a chance that you don't have to? Alright, the new switch has been fully installed now. Had a little tiny bit of a disaster when I was inserting one of the wires. The switch housing actually cracked. So I went and got some super glue and put it back together, and it seems like it'll hold. I think there might have been a hairline crack in it from the factory. I really don't know. But no matter now. Let's have a test run and see what happens. It might go bang or it might actually work. Let's see. Look at that. I think it's on the medium speed, same as it was. You see, this ceiling fan has always been a little different from any other that I have ever worked with, in that the speeds are arranged differently. It goes high, low, and then medium. So right after this, if this is the medium speed, yep, that's off. All right, let's try high. And the next speed should be low, and it appears that it is. And then medium. So I think it's time to go ahead and turn things off again. Put the light kit back up there. Okay, there is the whole mess back together after way too much work. I don't know where that extra length of string came from, but that's definitely a fair bit longer than it was. Oh well, let's see if it at least works, or if the whole thing goes bang. Nope, it seems to work. It was a bit of a trick getting all that wiring to go back up in there, especially that little capacitor, which kept wanting to fall out. Let's see if the speed adjustment switch works still. Okay, that should be off. Yeah, I once put that clock in the refrigerator because it was making irritating noise. It's now 2 o'clock in the morning, I believe. That's low. And that should be medium. And it is most definitely 2 o'clock in the morning, so I think it's time for nonsensible people such as myself to get themselves to bed. But in the meantime, if you have a comment, please feel free to post it. And thank you for watching.